presenter. Today, our presenter again is Sarah MacArthur, and she is the current, I want to give the right title, Executive Director and Land Instructor of Impact, Personal Safety of Colorado. So, welcome, Sarah. Let me now take 1 second and change and give Sarah the. Okay, we're switching. Just take a minute for us to make Sarah the presenter. Sarah, now you are the presenter. Sarah,
Okay.
here you go.
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great.
Welcome, Sarah.
Great. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be part of this presentation and to get to bring to you information about violence prevention and healing through empowerment self-defense. As Agatha said, I am Sarah MacArthur. I'm the Executive Director of Impact, Personal Safety of Colorado. And I'm really excited to be here today to present this information. There will be a couple of times through the presentation where we'll open up to questions, and you can ask questions and I'm happy to answer them at that point. And then after the presentation, there'll be another time for questions, and then any other questions I'm happy to answer in person, via phone or email. So happy to answer any questions you might have. So let's go ahead and get started. Tell you a little bit about who we are. Okay, so Impact Personal Safety of Colorado is part of a national and international organization. We have chapters throughout the United States and a few in international territories. We have 35 years of experience in personal safety. We've been in Colorado since 2006, and we're founded by Amelia and David Dorn. Amelia Dorn, prior to starting Impact chapter in Colorado, was on staff at the Impact chapter in Los Angeles from 1997 through 2005. So she brought her experience and expertise with her from the Impact Los Angeles chapter. Our curriculum is created through research philosophy. So what that means is that at the time that the curriculum was created, they did research on assaults, like sexual assaults, what happened, how they happen, what assaults look like, different ways assaults happen, resistance. They talk to victims, they talk to perpetrators, they talk to psychologists, and different professional people, and created a curriculum based on how the body reacts under stress and adrenaline, how socialization plays a role in our ability to stand up for ourselves or self-defense, our ability to be able to use communication skills, fight or flight, freeze, how that affects things, as well as how we are designed physiologically in our bodies and how that can have an effect when we are considering self-defense. So we serve children, teens, adults through empowerment self-defense. So what is empowerment self-defense, also known as ESD? Empowerment self-defense is a comprehensive and holistic method of violence resistance education for people vulnerable to violence. Our programs are trauma-informed, and instructors are sensitive to abuse and trauma. So in order to become an instructor for Impact, so I'm also a lead instructor, it takes hundreds of hours of training in class and as well as learning the curriculum in order to become an instructor for Impact. So we also go through trauma training, which is understanding how trauma might be presented, how trauma might be triggered because of the scenario experiential type of work that we do, how we can be sensitive to it. And both our lead instructors and what we call our student instructors are trained in this, as well as our assistants, so that we have an understanding and create a safe space. Part of creating the safe space that we use is to create a space where we have confidentiality, creating a space where our students know they can share if they want, but they don't have to. Part of creating that safe space is honoring the boundaries, even though we're teaching boundary setting and verbal skills is understanding and accepting the boundaries of our students as they have them in class. So we really are, it's important to us to have that trauma-informed and sensitive to abuse and trauma portion of our programming. ESC creates a unique healing experience for many who have experienced past violence and trauma through experiencing stimulated scenarios in a safe and supportive environment. Our programs create an opportunity for students to increase self-confidence, increase their sense of personal power and empowerment. So why empowerment self-defense? Empowerment self-defense offers more than just physical skills. Our programs offer skills in awareness, assertiveness, verbal communication, along with safety strategies. The goal of our programs is to create an environment where students can increase feelings of empowerment, peace, and self-efficacy. Our programs offer skills and techniques for possible situations, and we empower students to use their own judgment without us telling them what they should do. So we're considered non-prescriptive, meaning we don't say, you know, don't go running outside with your headphones in a way to keep yourself safe. We give people skills and tools so that they can make that personal decision of whether they feel that they have the ability to do that. We acknowledge that our students are the best person to decide how to keep themselves safe, and we honor what they already know and have done in their own personal safety journey. So all of us have skills that we know that are part of our survival mechanisms that are just intuitive to the body and to the brain. And so we like to honor those in class, not necessarily believing that we are teaching our students all these new things, but instead giving them options and choice. Our programs are taught in the adrenalized state through experiential learning, which causes our techniques to be stored in the muscle memory. So there's not a need for an ongoing requirement for continued programs. So what the adrenalized state means is that because we teach experiential and we teach scenario-based work, we create a safe space to create a scenario that may simulate threat, intimidation, or violence. And what that does is it creates the part of the brain to go into fight, flight, or freeze. And through that, we give instruction and coaching and support to students so that they can learn the techniques, so that they can work through the techniques, so that they can manage their adrenaline and be able to think with their executive part of their function, even though they're in the fight or flight portion of their brain. Our programs acknowledge that abuse and assault are never the victim's fault. People do not ask for, cause, invite, or deserve to be assaulted. It is not their fault if they have verbally or physically unable to prevent an attack. Perpetrators are responsible for their actions and their use of violence to overpower, control, and abuse another human being. So even though we're teaching self-defense, we want to make sure that our students know that it is never their fault, it is never their responsibility to feel like they are the ones that have to, protect themselves. We give them options and tools to make a choice if this is a way that they want to go. And we believe empowerment self-defense is a viable option for healing. It may not be the best option for everybody, but we do believe it is a viable option for prevention and healing. So some of the foundational philosophies that Impact is based on is that we teach skills for the everybody. So you don't have to have a certain level of fitness. You don't have to be a certain age. You don't have to be a certain body type. We make sure that our skills are easy to learn and easy to maneuver. Anybody can do them. So like I said before, we teach children, teens, and adults. And all age ranges. So we wanted to make sure that our programming could be accessible to anybody, including those with disabilities. We honor what students already know about their personal safety and offer additional skills through experiential learning. We take a trauma-informed approach which creates and fosters a safe environment to explore new skills. We explore the role of socialization plays in personal safety, and we teach skills that empower our students to manage their adrenaline in a highly stressful state so that they can make the best choice for their own safety. While we teach physical skills for worst case scenarios, we teach students communication strategies and other safety skills to keep themselves and others safe as a first option. So I want to go back a little bit to the part of socialization. and how that plays a role. So as we're growing up and as we're children, we have a lot of things that we hear through either media, through home, through parents and caregivers, through friends and family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, teachers. So we have all these different expectations and learning styles that we're learning. And so socialization can look like some people being told, that hitting is not okay, or that standing up for yourself is not okay, that you should always be kind, you should always be polite, these type of things, or that on the opposite spectrum, that you're expected to be strong, that you're not allowed to cry, that you're not allowed to show emotion, or that the only emotion you're allowed to show is anger. And so we look at how in our classes we explore how socialization plays a role and how does that come to the surface when people are in the adrenaline state. So we understand and acknowledge that some people have concern about the way self-defense has been and can be presented, which emphasizes physical skills, victim blaming, prescriptive safety tips, and stranger danger. We also acknowledge that some self-defense programs take an approach that suggests limiting people's lives in order to stay safe. And we take a research-based approach to reduce myths about violence with facts. An example of this is we know that the majority of crimes committed are committed by people we know in familiar places. We offer a variety of skills that can be used by anybody, which allows our students to make their most empowered decision in any circumstance. We desire our students to live their lives to the fullest. Okay, so some of the other things that we know based on fact is that there can be greater violence to different populations. And so we take that into a fact. We also know that not every population has free access to proper police support and things like that. And so we look at all of those things about how we are working with students. We also don't victim blame. We honor what our students have done in the past. And we also what our students have done in the past, and we also know that violence is on the part of the perpetrator and they are responsible for their actions. So some of our teaching methods, to go into more detail, experiential learning. So that just means that we are hands-on. And so when people are in our programs, we take a hands-on approach. So it's less about learning. We do some learning by hearing, but a lot of learning by doing. So what we do is we take a slow approach and we show a scenario, and then we break down that scenario into little pieces. And those little pieces get broken down even more into more bite-sized pieces. And those pieces are practiced. They're gone through a number of times with students. We, as a staff, support and help our students so that they make sure they're feeling comfortable knowing that not everybody might be at the same level with physicality. And so we take the time as a staff to really support our students however they need it. We ask a lot of open-ended questions, finding out what our students need for support. Then our programs, then we go into what we call practice drills. So we give students even more time to practice by going through drills. We demonstrate, then we go very slowly and allow each student to practice what they're learning, all the while they're receiving one-on-one coaching with a lead instructor. And that gives them the opportunity to really look at how adrenaline might be affecting their body, what their body's reaction might be to the adrenaline, what are some of the body language things that might be coming up as a result of that, and also taking the awareness to understand that what is the purpose of what they're doing, why are they doing it, and we're there as an instructor to coach them in what they're looking for and giving them the support they need. All the while, the other students in the class are also creating a safe and supportive environment by encouraging our students, by clapping for them. And what we find is that as students are going through this process, the more students watch another student, they're actually learning the skills and techniques as well. So by the time we get to the end of the line, what we're finding is that students are already picking up by watching. And we believe this to be based on mirror neurons. And so it's very exciting. It's fun to watch in class. By creating a scenario-based approach, what we're doing is creating a way for the mind to process in a safe environment an experience that may be perceived as a threat, intimidation, of violence, but is not actually those things. And it allows the brain to go into what we call the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And the fight, flight, or freeze mode, you may or may not know what that is, but fight means in a situation where we perceive danger, our brain options are to fight, flight, and freeze. And there may be others, but these are the three we focus on. So fight means to fight. That may mean to be verbal. It may mean to be physical. It may mean to enter into the scenario. The flight would mean getting yourself to safety, getting yourself out of the scenario, and not engaging. The freeze response would be when the brain doesn't know whether to fight or flight. It can go into freeze response, and freeze response can be where we don't really know what to do and we're sort of stuck in that space. And so through the scenario base, through creating a safe environment to do this, we notice, one, what our response is, and two, we help students to breathe through it. We coach them and help them to think about what their choices are and how they can move forward and how they can use their executive part, their thinking part of their brain to make a good choice. We also help them to learn to manage that adrenaline and also to use things like breathing and talking so that it helps them to break the freeze response and be able to decide what's best for their safety in that moment. So the scenario-based teaching allows us to do that. It allows the students to have the experiences that they may not ever have outside of really facing an experience in the real world. And this gives them some worst case scenario options of, I've been in a worst case scenario, I've had coaching, I have the support of this group, and now I know how that really works. So just a little bit about myself. I am a survivor of sexual assault, and I grew up in a abusive home. And as a result, my response to fear was freeze. And so before I took my class in 2009, what I would find is that if somebody would approach me and want to ask me questions about me, personal questions about me, I didn't really know what to do or how to respond. And so my adrenaline would take over, and I would find myself giving out the personal information about myself that I knew I didn't want to do, but I didn't know what to do in the situation, and I just wanted to get away to safety. And so what I found was that having gone through the class and experienced some of these scenario-based opportunities is that I learned to be able to talk my way through it, to be able to manage my adrenaline, to be able to listen to what that person is saying, and to be able to respond out of a different space as opposed to just fight, flight, or freeze and fear. And so after my class, I did have a scenario where somebody did approach me, was talking to me, asking questions, and I was able to have a conversation that allowed me to keep myself safe and allowed me to be aware and to operate out of the part of my brain that allowed me to make good decisions and that allowed me to manage my adrenaline and that allowed me to be able to not say the things I didn't want to say and to say the things that I did want to say. So my before impact and after impact experience was quite impressive in the ability to be able to play the scenarios out. I've heard from other people who have taken our class that, things about like, I've had some of those experiences, but maybe a stranger walks up to them and is asking them questions. I've had those experiences. They felt really scary to me, and I didn't know what to do with them. And it's really nice to be able to practice. What are some of my options? What are some of the things that I can do? And so that's part of creating that scenario base. It gives us tools in order to maybe create a different script. Also for the trauma survivor, or a sexual assault survivor, so speaking for myself again, having a scenario base where I could defend myself verbally and physically if needed was really helpful in healing for me, in that it allowed me to know what I was capable of, and it allowed me to create a different sort of script in my history, and a different script in my going forward and my ability to further my healing process. So when I say muscle memory, what I mean by that is that when we teach in the slow, step-by-step space in experience with adrenaline, what happens is that these techniques become part of our muscle memory. They become things that we have that sort of get stuck in that place where we can automatically access them. So for instance, like, we don't think about brushing our teeth or tying our shoes or even driving a car, right? All of those happen in the more subconscious part of our brain. They're just automatic responses to knowing what to do. And so when we teach through the experience and through adrenaline, we're able to allow the strategies and skills that we're teaching students to be put into muscle memory. And this allows them to be able to access these without the need for ongoing practice, without the need for ongoing programming and teaching skills. Right. Also, we create a lot of opportunities throughout our classes for students to practice the skills, knowing that, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to look a certain way. We do hold a higher standard just because we know of what adrenaline does to the body in those moments in time. And so what we want to do is give as much practice as we can so that the student has the ability to practice all of the different things, verbal skills and physical strategies and safety strategies, and taking the moment to be aware of what's going on in the situation and to ask them some inner questions, and to be able to further manage their adrenaline. So one of the things that our students talk most about is the safe and supportive environment that we create here at Impact. So while we're creating, experiential learning and scenario-based learning, we want our students to feel safe and supported, because, when you're doing a hard thing, it's hard to do it on your own. When you're doing a hard thing and you have the support of people, it helps to create an environment of safety and courage and confidence, and we really support each other through that process. And so we have other students encouraging students, and it just happens sort of naturally. They bond in a very special way. They encourage each other. They are holding space for each other. They are present for each other. And so that allows for a fuller perspective of taking in all the information for the skills that they are learning. Does anybody have any questions thus far?
This is Agueda. At this time, I don't see any questions typed in the question box or in the chat box. So as if they come up, I can let you know.
Okay, Agueda, can you run the poll that asks about the empowerment self-defense?
I do have a problem, but the poll was closed, and then the other ones did not.
Oh, it's closed.
So.
Okay, no problem. No problem at all.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on. Okay, so talking a little bit about prevention and healing and how our work can foster those. So we teach in our programs about awareness and intuition, and we help, so again, we teach from children to adults. And with the children, we really like to teach awareness in the form of playing things out. We have a lot of fun. We talk about different animals and how they might have an awareness and intuition. And we think about sort of the bunny, and when the bunny is out and it hears something, what does it do to react, and awareness and intuition. And so the kids get to pick out different animals, and they have a really fun time looking at awareness and intuition. And these are things that are generally part of who we are as human beings, is that we have awareness and intuition. And so we really work with students to be able to understand what is awareness and what is intuition. So some of the things I ask when I ask about awareness is, what is awareness? And often students will say, awareness is being aware of, your surroundings, which is absolutely correct. And we expand that into saying it's being aware of not just your surroundings and what's going on around you, but also what's going on within you. Are you late? Are you tired? Are you sick? Are you distracted? So just knowing like a holistic view of awareness is what's going on with me, what's going on around me. You can even look at your neighborhood and say, what's going on in my neighborhood? And by kind of getting a baseline of what's normal around me, it helps our intuition to come to the space of something's a little bit out of normal, and so I'm going to have a heightened awareness because of that. So we can look at our neighborhoods and say, okay, we know that all of our neighbors have these particular cars, or we know this person lives here and they leave their porch light on, or that they get a newspaper delivered. We know sort of the neighborhood kids, those kind of things. They all give us a baseline of what's normal for us, and then it helps us to really be in that space of, okay, this is normal, and my intuition can just be the one sort of in charge. So let me know if something's out. So an example would be, I know that when I leave my house, I lock the door between the garage and the house. And so if I come home and I go to and I know that nobody else is home, and I go to enter my house and the door is unlocked, my intuition might go on to go, okay, this is something that's out of the normal. And now I'm just going to be a little more aware of, why might this be? The options can be, I forgot to lock it. Maybe my partner forgot to lock it. Or is there something more going on that I need to be more cautious about? So it just allows us to make those assessments and have those questions for ourselves. And then we talk about intuition. So intuition is often that feeling, most people refer to it as a gut feeling of when maybe something is a little bit off or not right. So different people experience intuition in different ways. So intuition can come up in feeling our gut, like we feel a pit in our stomach, or some people may have sweaty palms. Some people might have an increased heart rate. Other people might feel the hair on the back of their neck standing up. Often in intuition, we don't know exactly what's causing that to go off, but it can create the fear response and help, and we can go into fight, flight, or freeze, depending on what our intuition is telling us. So if you've ever met another person and maybe they seem very friendly and very kind, but there's just something that's not quite, you can't put your finger on it, but for some reason you just feel a little off, that could be your intuition letting you know that there is something there and you can't quite understand it. There's also intuition not against people, but about maybe going to a place or entering a building or a situation, and our intuition just kind of goes off. And sometimes there might not be anybody there to confirm our intuition for us. So we might feel like, oh, I don't know, I'm feeling off about this thing, so I'm going to choose not to do it. And you don't ever actually know whether it was something that could lead to danger or not to danger. And so intuition is one of those things that we help our students to connect to their intuition and to be able to begin to listen and define, like, is this something I want to listen to, and to reward themselves for listening even when they don't have clear evidence that something was off. So when we talk about intuition, we find a lot of times that intuition can be sort of pushed down or not listened to as part of socialization. So we as people have this great ability to have an intuition to let us know whether we're safe or not safe. And oftentimes socialization comes into play in us not listening to our intuition, and that we might have that feeling that something's not quite off, but we don't want to be perceived as rude, or we don't want to be perceived as not helpful. We don't want to be perceived as, you know, not somebody that is going to stand up for other people, or not somebody who's going to be involved. And so we might not listen to our intuition in a way to not be perceived in such ways. And so one of the things, as time goes on, if we continually push our intuition down, sometimes we can become out of touch with it, where we're not exactly sure if our intuition's going off, or if we should, or if we're being, you know, more just in fear. And so we help to work through some of that, and to know, like, listen to intuition, and to go, okay, something's going off in my body. How do I listen to it? And even if I don't have a way to express, or even if I have no confirmation that this is, you know, a place of danger, I'm going to listen to it as well, and to reward that. And so we really look into intuition. We also talk in our family classes called the Empowered Family, where we teach a full family topic on safety. And we talk to our caregivers about the importance of intuition in children. So children also have intuition, and they may use it in different ways than we do. And it's really important that we help children to be able to hone in on their skills, to be able to listen to that intuition, to know when their intuition's going off. And so it might look like, in children, it might look like somebody talks to them while you're standing in line at the grocery store, and they hide behind you, and they don't want to talk to that person, and they don't feel great about it. So that intuition might be telling them that, you know, they're just not either in the mood to talk, or maybe they don't feel comfortable with that person, so they hide. In another instance, you might be standing at the grocery store, and I know this is true for my own child, is that they were open to talking to the person and having a nice, lovely conversation with them, and their intuition felt really good about that. So when it comes to children, we look at, what is their intuition, how might it come up, and how can we help to grow their intuition, and knowing that if their intuition is going off, maybe our intuition is not going off. Maybe the perceived danger is not towards us. So it's not necessarily like a one size fits all, in that if our child's intuition is going off, ours is also going off. It's more in that we each have our own intuition, and we may be target or perceive the danger towards us, which another person might not feel. And so we really look at that and help all levels of participants understand their intuition and how to listen to that. So the communication piece of the work we do is that we find that verbal conversations are hard for people in general. So if somebody, a stranger, comes up to you on the street and talks to you, it can definitely create additional stress, and that stress can cause the adrenalized response. And so it becomes difficult to know what to do, and different people have different ways of handling that. So what we do is we create an opportunity for our students to have conversations, a scenario-based conversation with people they don't know. We teach them strategies of different ways to engage in the conversations, and even though they might be adrenalized, to be able to talk to strangers as a way of stating their needs, but also doing what they can to get themselves to safety without having to use any of the physical strategies. When it comes to communication, we also teach communication with familiars. So we, like I mentioned before, we know that most boundaries are crossed by people we know in familiar places. And so having conversations with people we know can be even more difficult sometimes than having a conversation with a stranger, because one, we know them, two, we may not want to hurt their feelings depending on our own preferences and socializations. We also don't know how they will react, and so Sometimes things like the fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment might play a role in having those difficult conversations. So we teach communication skills in scenario-based, where people can practice asking for what they need, making clear what's important to them, drawing boundaries. So this is sort of going into the next one, which is the boundary setting. Drawing boundaries. What are boundaries? Can they change? Is it okay to change them? Is it okay for one day to be okay with one thing and the next day to not? Is it okay for them to change moment by moment, hour by hour? And to also really have an understanding of physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, and to know what it is we want and what we don't want. And so in doing so, we can use our communication skills to either set a boundary, and we may have to set it more than once, and know that we are creating boundaries for ourselves, or that we can ask for what we need. And so allowing people to really tune into their awareness, their intuition, have the ability in the adrenalized state to be able to use their communication skills to set boundaries, helps them to, one, just be able to assess the situation, assess for danger, and be able to think through those pieces of it, and to be able to communicate what they need, whether it's setting a boundary with a stranger and getting themselves the safety, or setting a boundary with somebody in their life that's potentially crossing the line and making the decision whether what they need to do and whether they would like to keep that person in their life. Again, we create a safe space to practice. And so our students often don't know the scenario that they're getting. So we help them problem solve and work through. So again, one-on-one coaching right there with the student. And we help give them some tips and some ideas. We try out different scenarios. They don't know exactly what they're going to get or how that instructor is going to respond. And so it teaches them in that space to go through the flow. And it also allows them to manage their adrenaline in these type of scenarios, in going like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do next. They came back with a response that I wasn't expecting, and now I don't know what to do. And so we go, okay, let's take a nice deep breath. We do some grounding work, and then we look at, okay, what are some of your options? Let's try this option. Let's try that option. And in doing that, again, we're creating that muscle memory, and we're creating the calming effect in the adrenaline management. So a great example of prevention work is To Our Empowered Family. It's one of our programs that we have, and we teach children 6 to 12 about personal safety, as well as their caregivers. And so what we do is we create that safe space for both children and the caregivers. They're in classes simultaneously, but not together. And they both get to learn about personal safety and explore the skills they already have and learn new skills. So many of the skills when it comes to protecting ourselves are skills that we have that are just part of being human beings. And we sometimes through socialization have not, grown them or listened to them. Children much more are more in touch with those things because they don't have maybe as much socialization as adults. And so we allow them to explore the skills that they already know, and maybe how they experience awareness, how they already experience intuition. And we teach them some new skills about awareness and intuition. We explore those, like I said before, awareness, intuition, boundaries, and we do that with children too. One of the conversations we have with caregivers is what are the boundaries for our children, and how are they allowed to have their boundaries? And some of those boundaries are the things like body boundaries and consent, even with children, is to talk about, hey, what are your children allowed to do? What are they allowed to have as far as boundaries? So if somebody wants to hug your child and they are another family member, is your child made to hug them, or do they have choice? And we often recommend giving children the choice to decide who they would like to receive physical contact to and who they would like to give it to, and being okay with that, and that children are not responsible for the emotional reactions of adults in that. If it hurts somebody's feelings, we don't want to teach children that they have to be okay with or expect unwanted touch just to make somebody feel better. And so we talk to this with an entire family and talk about boundaries so that the family can begin to explore boundaries as a family. Looks like, tickling, that looks like hugging, that looks like kissing, in between siblings, in between caregivers and children, with extended family, with strangers. So we talk about body autonomy and intuition and awareness. And as I mentioned before, we talk about intuition in the way of, our intuition may be different than our children's intuition, and how can we be, as parents, open and listening to those things. We educate caregivers on the importance of consistent safety values and beliefs. So many people, when they grow up in a family unit, grow up with certain values and beliefs. So it may be a religious belief, it may be a belief about health and eating and wellness. And we believe that safety also has a place in that space. To have a whole family conversation or a whole unit conversation about safety, about awareness, about intuition, about conversation and open communication. And we believe that really opens a first line of defense to our students and especially to children. So we teach children to disclose and caregivers to receive disclosures while managing stress and adrenaline. So we do scenarios with children where we talk about maybe having a situation where, their intuition is feeling a little bit off and they want to, talk to their parents about it or talk to their caregiver about it. And so we teach them, like, some of the things to look for, some of the things to talk about, what might they disclose to the caregivers. And simultaneously, we're teaching the caregivers how to receive a disclosure, right? So we want children to have open communication with us as a great way, first line of self-defense and personal safety. And so we open ourselves up to receiving those disclosures as adults, and it can be scary and it can be stressful because we don't know what they might disclose to us. And especially if we have our own history of trauma. So it could be that we were also bullied as children. It could be that we have experienced sexual assault or just abuse or trauma. And that when a child discloses something that's going on with them, it can be extremely adrenalizing for us, and it can definitely increase our stress levels. And so we teach caregivers to be able to receive disclosures, but also to respond by managing stress and adrenaline, by breathing, by being able to answer, by, acknowledging the child for coming to them, by being able to answer open-ended questions without judgment. So to find out more information, if the caregiver needs, they might need a moment to collect themselves outside the space of the presence of their children, to ask for that, to be able to think things through before they really make any decisions on what the child might be disclosing to them. And so this gives them a moment to breathe, to think, to come out of that possible place of stress and adrenaline, and to be able to acknowledge the child, thank them, help reestablish anything they need as far as feeling safe and being able to decide what's going on. Also, it's really important that our reactions, our emotional reactions, especially when dealing with children, can definitely have an effect on the children. So if a child comes to us with a disclosure and our reaction is quite big and adrenalized and angry or frustrated, one, it can cause the child to maybe not want to come to us again, but also it can cause a child to be more emotionally responsive to the situation than maybe they previously were. And so we look at that and we want to make sure that we help an entire family be able to communicate. We teach children and family the consistent communication language. So in our classes, we teach what's called a magic formula, which is a formula of basically addressing a behavior, expressing the feeling, and asking for what you need. And so we teach it both to the children and to the parents or the caregivers, and we allow them to see that, to see them practice those, and so that they know how to respond to each other and they know how to open this type of communication up. between themselves. We also give parents the opportunity through scenario-based to have difficult conversations with other parents who might want their children to come over and play, or to have a sleepover with school administration in the event of needing to have difficult conversations. And so it allows for that space of finding adrenaline management, confidence, body language, as well as communication skills to be able to have those difficult conversations on behalf of our children. So an example of the disclosure piece is this last week. I live in Johnstown, and this last week we had a number of threats to our high schools and middle schools and even elementary schools through the district. Many of the district schools were on lockdown. My son's school was not. He is 8 years old and in second grade. And as part of that, you know, he came home having heard about the lockdowns and the possible threat of violence, and, you know, asked me a question about it. And I took some deep breaths and I said to him, you know, what did you hear? And so he explained the things that he heard. And then I acknowledged, hey, thanks for coming to talk to me about it. You're right. These are the things that, these are the facts. And so we talked about it as very factual. I asked him how he felt about it. So he expressed some fear, but for the most part felt safe and okay in his school and with his teacher. And I asked him if there was anything he needed from me in order to continue the conversation or to feel more safe. To which he said, no, he just would like me to talk to him if there are, you know, other incidences where this happened, that we can have open conversations about it. And even though it was scary, and as a parent, it was scary even for myself, we were able to just have a conversation that was open-ended and factual, and I was able to manage my adrenaline in being able to discuss it with him and create a place where he felt safe having that conversation with me. So that's an example of how a disclosure can be a great opportunity for conversation between a caregiver and a child. So part of the healing process of impact. After our training, survivors have experienced an increase in feelings of personal safety, confidence, self-efficacy, assertiveness, restoration and boundary setting, and communication skills. Our programs can increase their perception and connection to their own bodies and a feeling of personal power. Our students can also experience a decrease in fear, anxiety, stress, vulnerability, as well as lowering feelings of shame and self-blame. And so I wanted to share briefly my experience as a sexual assault survivor, having taken impact, because again, I don't want to speak for any students, but I can tell you how this work has been a part of my healing process. So not only do I have a history of sexual assault, but I also have a history of growing up in a home where domestic abuse was present, which created a pretty much consistent feeling of unsafe feelings for me and fear. And so as I became an adult and moved out into the world became a very unsafe place for me. And not only had I experienced sexual assault in my teen years, but I also experienced another incident in which my boundaries are seriously crossed, and was sort of my reaction in that was the same. And so what happened is that I became so afraid of living life that I was almost creating a paralysis in me. And so I didn't want to go out by myself, especially at night. I often didn't want to go out alone. I was married very young, and so I often put the responsibility of my personal safety on my husband, and would want him to go out with me. And so it became a very paralyzing experience for me. And so I found an impact class, came to the place of realizing like this is a very difficult space for me to live in, and I am seeking healing through therapy, but I just feel like I want to find a way to feel more safe in my own body. So I found Impact Personal Safety of Colorado and went through the 20-hour basics course. What I found in the course was that not only could I understand awareness, but really gain back the choice of listening to my intuition. But because I lived in such a fear state for so long, I had lost touch with my own intuition. So I regained those skills. I also realized that I have more power than I thought I had. So by going through some of the scenarios, managing my adrenaline, using some of the skills that I've been taught under worst case scenarios, I realized like, wow, I actually have a lot of empowerment and self-power within myself. I found that I gained more confidence, that the way I held myself, the way I presented myself shifted and changed. And also that when I looked back on my assault, and I'm speaking personally here, when I look back on my own assault, I realized that I was able to, one, identify my assault as assault. It was something that I hadn't told really anybody, and I had a lot of self-blame, and I didn't even identify it as assault. And so I was, one, able to identify it as assault, but two, I was able to give myself credit and see all the ways that I did make really good decisions that kept me safe. And so I was able to honor that within myself. I was able to view my own self-power and my empowerment. I was able to gain confidence. And for me, because of the fear state I lived in, I didn't have a lot of self-efficacy. I didn't have a lot of ability to have difficult conversations and stand up for myself. But post-impact class, I was able to have difficult conversations with people that were crossing my boundaries. I was able to ask my work for an increase in pay. This was before I worked at Impact. I was able to set some really good boundaries around for my son, and it allowed me to even think about the way in which I want to parent, creating a space where my son has autonomy, body boundaries, and the ability to have good communication with me, things that I did not grow up with. And so I found that the way I moved in the world was in that space of decrease in fear, anxiety, and vulnerability. I have used my skills on a couple of occasions, none as far as having to use physical skills, but I have used my awareness, intuition, and boundary setting skills with both strangers and people I've known, and feel thankful to have known them and having got to practice them in a scenario-based simulation. And so, again, I feel like empowerment self-defense is a viable healing option for survivors, and it may not be for everybody, and that is absolutely okay. And talk a little bit about perpetrators. So our program, we acknowledge that abuse, and I said this before, an assault are never the victim's fault. Perpetrators are responsible for their actions and their use of violence to overpower, control, and abuse another human being. We also believe that socialization plays a large role in violence by perpetrators, and often perpetrators are also victims of trauma. And while we know this can be true, we do not use this knowledge to excuse acts of violence and assault by perpetrators. Often we have found the majority of perpetrators to be men. And so we have taken a holistic approach to violence prevention by working with perpetrators, men perpetrators, through a state prison program. Our work there has given us the opportunity to provide communication skills, boundary setting skills, adrenaline management, and anger management through de-escalation skills. So the goal of our work at the prison was to provide skills in the adrenalized state that provide for a non-violent choice through self-efficacy, communication, boundary setting, and de-escalation. So what we have found, especially for people who identify as men, is that society often does not make space for them to express and feel emotions of sadness and fear and helplessness, but often they are allowed to express emotion of anger and violence. and as a result of that, often don't know how to manage their anger, manage their adrenaline, set good boundaries, and communicate asking for the things they need, and also not being carried into another person's energy, especially when there is a friend or somebody egging them on, somebody that is, maybe using words against their masculinity in order to create a response from them. And so the work we've done is to go directly to the source of perpetrators. So the perpetrators may be violent in different ways, not just necessarily sexual assault, but they are in this program because they are working to be released and to understand empathy and to have different options for life skills in an effort to be able to make different life choices. And so what we've done is we've gone in for them and helped them to practice in scenario based. We don't teach any physical skills in this environment. Our program is very customizable for people who are not interested in physical skills, but we can teach these self-efficacy skills. We can teach nonviolent communication skills. We can teach boundary setting skills. We can teach de-escalation skills so that they have the ability to make a different choice in that fight or flight part of the thing, part of their brain. We also receive years and years of letters from the students we work with in the prison who thank us for our work, for coming, for being willing to work with them, who have said things like, if only I had these skills before, if only I knew how to manage my adrenaline before, if only. And so we want to help provide this type of work for all ages. So we work with all genders, from children to teens to adults, and help to understand that our work, different people take different things from our work. So somebody who maybe is, used to being a fighter, we can teach them de-escalation skills so that they can make a different choice if they so choose. Somebody who, like me, was very timid and didn't actually know how to stand up for myself or how to create boundaries, was able to find that inner confidence and power that allowed me to do such things as stand up for myself and make boundaries. We find that some people, the confidence comes from learning the physical skills, and for some people, the confidence comes from learning the boundary setting skills, and for some, it's the communication skills. So what we find is that in our work, that different people, they take different parts of our work, and this is something that tends to go into their life and not just say like, oh, the class is over now and that was great and fun and we'll go about. These are skills that get put into their everyday life so that they can live their best life. So often our graduates, whether they are a trauma survivor or not, have reported increased feelings of safety, empowerment, boundary setting, and communication skills. They often report using these skills to enhance their daily lives. Our students often express feelings of greater confidence, self-esteem, assertiveness, a greater awareness and connection to their intuition, increased ability to set boundaries and effectively communicate their needs, problem-solving skills under stress and adrenaline, and greater feeling of safety. So the type of programs that we offer are our empowered workshops, which are 2 to 4 hour programs for the workplace nonprofits. So these can be customized to talk about or to bring scenarios about communication skills, about boundary setting skills. We also teach skills about being a bystander. And so we look at, what is effective for this organization. So we have some organization nonprofits that we work with that maybe have advocates that go into people's home who don't feel necessarily safe in going by themselves. And so we can teach them some skills for that, for awareness, intuition, and safety skills, as well as we might have people who go door to door. And so our work has come in for those type of things. We have our Empowered Family, which I mentioned earlier. It's an 8-hour program for children ages 6 to 12 and their caregivers. And so generally these classes are broken up more into age ranges, so usually 6 to 9 and then 10 to 12. And so they're a lot of fun and they meet simultaneously, so usually a Saturday and a Sunday, or 2 Saturdays or 2 Sundays. And so you have the parents at the same time, or the caregivers at the same time as the children, working together to learn the family safety skills. We have a teen basics class, which is 18-hour programs for teens 13 to 18 years old. These programs are, again, for anybody, and the skills do not require athletic ability and things like this. And we find that, by the time we have teens, that we already have trauma survivors in our classes, but we also find that this is a great way for those who have not experienced any sexual assault to gain preventive skills, especially as they are going into their latter years of junior high, high school, and college. Our basics, we have 15 to 20-hour programs for adults. So these programs are not always just saying basics. So we have basics for those who identify as women, basics for those who identify as men, basics for all genders. And we also have basic classes for survivors of sexual assault. So in those classes, we know that we will that it will be trauma informed, and that we will be of support to our students however they need. Also, we know if our students are, currently in a dangerous situation or are seeing a therapist, we do want to have more conversation with them before working with them in one of our classes. After basics, our graduates can take an advanced 18-hour program, which just provides more skills in the adrenaline state. And then new to Colorado this year, we have increased to a defense against an armed assailant, which is a 15 to 20-hour program for basics, for graduates of the basics and advanced. So we offer a variety of programming, but we also offer private programming, which allows us, to customize, to take all the pieces, the modules of the things that we do, and to be able to take them to classes. So we do some great work in the high school, in one of the high schools we work with, where not only do we teach some of these skills, but we look at things like patterns of behavior, how do we see those patterns of behavior in other people, as well as how do we see those patterns of behavior in ourselves. We look at a deeper level at socialization and how it affects us individually. We work with our students to do a program, a project on maybe a topic they don't know about, such as gaslighting, microaggression, bullying, some of these things that are deeper that maybe students don't really know about or don't have a concept of what they are. And so we work with them, and so in doing presentations, they're teaching the other students about these types of things. We talk about toxic masculinity. We talk through a lot of these different concepts within our classes. We also look at some of the different programs that we have, and you can include those. We have a program where we look at boundaries, and we sit down and look at cards of, things that cross our boundaries, but to different degrees. And we have the students work together as like, well, what's really crossing our boundary, or what's okay, like it just a little bit crosses our boundary, what's too far crossing our boundary. And so it helps them to get a baseline of what are my boundaries and what are the ways that they might be crossed, and when is it time for me to make a decision about having our boundaries crossed in those ways. So for more information about impact or accessibility, you can visit our website at www.impact-colorado.org. If you would like more information or would like to connect with us, you can go to our contact page, and that will open up a form where you can send in your information, and I would be happy to connect with you and to answer any questions that you have. We do have public graduations for some of our classes. And so if you're interested to learn more, you're welcome to visit a public class. We're also happy to meet in person over coffee, myself as the executive director or Amelia Dorn as the founder, to answer any questions you might have or to explore how empowerment self-defense might be a viable option for healing in your community. Also, there are, when available, we have some scholarships directly through Impact. So adult scholarships through the Meg and Bill Dorn Memorial Fund, and then which is for adults. And then we have youth scholarship 18 and under through the Willa and Finley Dorn Be Your Own Hero Fund. And then we've also worked with some students who have had their classes paid for through the Victims Compensation Fund through the state of Colorado. And so we do have a scholarship program in which an application can be submitted with Impact, and a scholarship application can be requested, and it creates an opportunity for a scholarship if needed. Okay, I'd like to open up to any questions that we might have.
Yes, this is Agatha. We have one question. It says, beyond California or in Colorado, are there impact centers in other states, or is there a main website that lists all locations?
Yes, so the international organization that we're part of is Impact International. And Impact International website has a list of all of the different opportunities. I will look it up real quick and give the website. We have Impact in Boston. There's an Impact in New York, which is called Prepare. We have an Impact in New Mexico. We have an Impact in DC. There's an Impact in Los Angeles. There's an Impact in the Bay Area. There is an Impact in Chicago. And there's an Impact in England. There's an Impact in Israel. And so I may be missing some, but there are impacts. Also, if there's a state where Impact is not part, there is an opportunity for staff to travel, and sometimes we'll have created, a fundraiser in order to make that possible, where our staff can travel to another state to offer our services. If you give me just one moment, I will look up the Impact International website.
This is Agatha. Sarah, maybe you can get a list and send it to us, and then we will add it up to the PowerPoint slides that we're going to send everybody, so that way they can have it.
Oh, yes.
Question.
That would be perfect. Yes.
We also have
I can definitely do that.
Perfect. We have a second question. Is there a way to receive credit, or proof for attending these seminars?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is there a way to receive credit or proof for attending these seminars?
As in, are they accredited? So our programs are not accredited or CE credits. I know that the Impact New York, which is Prepare, was working to make part of the programming there part of CE credits. So here in Colorado, we do not currently have that, but I do believe that our Impact chapter, Prepare, which will be on the list that will be sent out, may have an option or may be working on an option for that.
Sarah, along the line, do you guys give like a certificate of what we do for some of the webinars, that we give a certificate that this person attended this training and this many hours?
Oh, yes. So after classes are complete, generally our students receive a certificate stating what class that they have taken and, how many hours that they have done. So they get a certificate of completion, basically.
Thank you. let's give it one more minute to see if anybody else has any other questions. Please add them in the question box, and I'm happy to read them. Um, yeah, so it looks like those were the questions that we had, Sarah. So
Okay,
I would like to thank you for doing this amazing presentation and letting us know about this fantastic program. Um,
thank you.
any questions that the attendees have, please send us an email, and we will make sure that Sarah gets these questions and get to talk to you directly. Um, our upcoming webinar that we have for next week actually is next month is Poetry as an Entry Point into Violence Prevention Work by Kylie. I'm not sure how to pronounce that number. And it will be on January 30th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Um, again, please fill out the survey at the end. I would like to let you know that this survey is a little bit different. We have created a SurveyMonkey link for folks to do the survey at the end of this webinar, and you can choose remind, sorry, I'm trying to read a note here. Just can just fill it out, and then we will send the information that we get also for our presenter today, Sarah. Other than that, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Sarah. You all will be receiving that email with the information. And one more comment here. Many thanks to you, Sarah, for this incredible webinar. So,
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Sarah, maybe we can, I'll communicate with you via email because I also have a couple other suggestions for you all. So thank you all.
Okay.
We'll see you next week. We do have a webinar for Title IX. I think some of you may have that information already. And then if you don't attend that one, we will see you in January. Have a happy holidays to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.